Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We're just finished. I'm just finishing up the final setups to get us on the road. Um, just bear with me. We've got about 4 minutes before the convention initially starts. I just want to make sure that the links are on Facebook, everything's set up and ready to go. And then at 1 p.m., we'll have this show on the road. There we go. Copy. Post. Post. Almost there. Almost there. Let me share there because I forgot to include the text. That's everything. Okay, folks, we are just about ready to go. We've got 2 minutes before the official start of the convention. I am going to wait. Hey, Virgo, I sent it to you via email. You should have it. If you do not, let me know and I'll resend it. Hey, Steve, welcome to the convention. I'm glad you're here. Oh, dang it. Oh, Virgo, I did send you the wrong link. I apologize. 1 second. This is why I started things a few minutes early, so I can catch these little goof ups that happened. Here we go. You should have it in your email now. Yeah, that was the charity that we decided to go with. Hey, Teresa, I'll go City Pagan. Steve, you do what you got to do. You're always welcome. In and out. By the way, Virgo Triad is a very interesting person, definitely among the people you should connect with. And she's actually going to be our first presenter after myself, of course. She'll be coming on at 2 to 2:15 ish. Okay, let's see. And it is now 1 o'clock. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to hopefully the very first, but not the last, Wrath of Khan. Now, like many conventions, we have to have a subtitle. So the full title of this convention is Wrath of Khan, the Corona Apocalypse. Because yes, I am a snarky human being. We will be going all day. The last thing is going to be starting at 8:15 at night. I can't even guess when it's going to end. It'll end basically when we're all too tired to keep going. And it is now 1 o'clock. And now I'm here. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to hopefully the very first, but not the last, Wrath of Khan. Like many conventions, we have to have a subtitle. Some sound is coming from. Okay, hopefully that fixed it. At any rate, so before I get into talking about myself and the convention, I want to go over the schedule with everybody real quick so that you know what's going on. You can also find a link to the webpage, which has the schedule in the description. So today's schedule, you've got 1 o'clock, which is right now, which is opening ceremonies. Should be pretty straightforward. At 2 o'clock, a good friend Virgo Triad is going to be coming on to talk about her work as one of the premier debunkers of the sovereign citizen movement. Around 3:15, we're going to have another. Actually, pretty much everybody who's going to be here this weekend is a friend of mine, someone I would consider a good friend. But the next person up at 3:15 is going to be John L. French. For those of you who don't know about John, John is a retired crime scene supervisor for the city of Baltimore, Maryland, and he is also a published author. He's written 2 textbooks on crime scene investigation. He's also written a ton of horror and fantasy and science fiction and things of that nature. He's actually going to read some stuff from his writings. After him, at around 4 to 4:15, my friend Patrick Thomas will be on. He's another really excellent writer. He does a lot of urban fantasy, things of that nature. And then rounding out our block of writers, we're going to have Dacre Stoker on at 5. Dacre is, in fact, part of that Stoker family. He is a great-grandnephew of Bram Stoker, the man who wrote Dracula. Dacre is also responsible for the family-authorized sequel to Dracula, which is Dracula the Undead, and the family-authorized prequel, Dracul, which came out last year, I want to say. Both extremely good books. He's going to do a reading of a story that Bram Stoker's mother told him during his own childhood illness about the cholera epidemic, and how serious that was. That Dacre believes was actually, and I think he's right, a big influence on the writing of Dracula. 7:15, well, 7:15, or excuse me, 6 to 6:15, because the schedule's slightly off here, is going to be Alex Strang. Alex Strang is an game designer, author, and artist. He's the head of a company called CyberGecko. I've known him for many years, and he is going to be doing something he calls manifesting demons, yokai, which is Japanese demons. He's going to be drawing them live for you on air, and as an added bonus, that is going to be one of the interactive parts of the evening. He's going to be taking suggestions from the audience and interacting with you guys directly. We're actually looking at having a phone line open so you can call in to talk to Alex and interact with him in that way. And then after Alex, around 8:15, we're going to be doing a free-for-all. It's going to be, those of you who have gone to conventions before will probably know that it's always kind of a common practice at the end of Saturday night for people to throw parties, relax. It's a lot more social. That's the idea with the free-for-all. I'm inviting all the guests from across the day. Some of the guests that are invited are coming on tomorrow. Some other friends of mine from around the internet. So I'll just come on, hang out. It's not going to have a formal topic. We're just going to shoot the breeze. We might do some EVPs, try to talk to some dead people. We may just get drunk. We all may just sit around and tell funny stories, and Alex may have some sort of game type thing for us to do. I don't know what's going to happen. It should be kind of crazy. It should be a lot of fun. So then it's not over yet, because tomorrow at noon we'll be back. I'll be starting out the day again and doing some magic for you all right here on camera. It's going to be extremely interactive. We're going to do some mind reading and some big card type things with you guys in the audience. Should be a lot of fun. At 1 o'clock, we're going to have very good friends of mine, Lilith Lore and Baron Mine. They are storytellers. Lilith's a pagan priestess. Really wonderful people. I'm not sure entirely what they're doing, but it should be absolutely amazing. At 2 o'clock tomorrow, Baron Voltage, who has been a longtime co-host of my radio show, Paranormal Encyclopedia, is going to be doing a panel on the nature of fear. I can't promise or guarantee anything, but you will likely see a few people that you've heard from across the rest of the convention popping in and out. to join him for that, myself included. At 3 o'clock, we're going to have my friend Source the Skeptic on. Source has an excellent YouTube channel. He is kind of oh, good heavens, I forgot something important from tonight. I'll get back to them after I finish tomorrow. But Source is big on doing a lot of things in ethics and various social issues. He's got a really good channel. I highly recommend checking him out. But he'll be joining us tomorrow. 4 o'clock, the other regular co-host of my YouTube channel and my radio show, Brian McKinley, the godfather of the vampire thriller, will be giving us a lecture on vampires. And if we're all very good and nice, maybe he'll even give us a reading. 5 o'clock, we're going. Brian, myself, Patrick, Thomas, John French, and Baron Wolchin are all going to join in together to do a panel on vampires, both in folklore and in the media. And then at 6 o'clock, we're going to be doing the closing ceremonies. The one person that's very important, I forgot, that's going on just before the free for all tonight, which is at 7 to 7:15, or at 7 to 7:15, is going to be my friend Arthur Moyer. Arthur is a magician. I am a stage magician. I do card tricks and coin tricks and things of that nature. Arthur is a magician in the fire. I don't want to say it because he doesn't actually do them, but the fireballs sort of sense. He's an actual occultist. He'll be giving us a lecture on the nature of magical energy. Should be extremely cool. So that's the lineup for the last 2 days, or for the today and tomorrow, I should say. It should be a lot of fun. And yes, Virgo, you should be able to be off camera. Dacre had, because there's when you go on. I'm gonna stop the stream between this and when you come on. It's one of the reasons I had people starting at 3:15 is to deal with things like that. And while I'm doing that, if you look at the bottom of the page, there's an option where you can mute your microphone and you can also hide your camera. So you'll actually be able to hide your camera so you don't have to show your face. Since I know, given the number of threats that you've had, privacy is a big issue with you, and I respect that. But that should be a lot of fun. This is also, by the way, the new there's some other things we should talk about. One is, for those of you who are wondering, we're currently using a software called Jitsi, Jitsi. This thing is incredibly cool. It's allowing me to sort through all of the guests. Guests are going to be able to share the computer screens and things of that nature, which they weren't able to do in other iterations of how we've had people on. It's completely free. It's potentially even, when Alex is on, we're going to open the phone lines up. Basically, you guys are going to be able to call in, and that's all set up through Jitsi. We don't need any extra programs. The other beautiful thing about the program is I'm not doing this in Jitsi and then using something else to stream it. It's going from Jitsi straight to YouTube. I don't have to do anything. I just sit here and let everything else do the work. It's a cool thing. So the two other big things I want to talk about is, one, the charity that we're promoting. Remember, Wrath of Khan. This year's Wrath of Khan. Next year, we're going to try and do it a live convention. If we do a live convention, it's not going to be free for obvious reasons. We're going to need to pay for our expenses. But this year is completely free. I am not even asking for donations. If you look at the description of this and all the other videos you'll see throughout the day, you're going to see that there's no Patreon link. There's no PayPal link. There's nothing of that nature. I do not want your money for doing this. I have 2 requests, one of which will not cost you a penny, and the other one would cost you something, but is up to you. And if you don't do it, no shame. So my first request is, if you're watching this and you're not already a subscriber, I would ask you to go to my normal Paranormal Encyclopedia YouTube page and subscribe. Takes a second. It's completely free. There's a link in the description. And we do weekly content like this. Everyone who's going to be on tonight has been a guest on and tomorrow for that matter, has been on guests on my show. At some point, you can go back and watch their interviews. It's a lot of fun. I definitely recommend checking it out. It is normally every week at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Obviously, we're not going to be doing it tonight because I'm going to be knee-deep in this convention. The other thing I am asking people to do is donate to a charity. There is we did some research. trying to find a good charity that was helping people out with the current crisis. And we found a group called Save the Children. There's a link in the description below. It is it's an organization that works worldwide to help children with various crises. It is currently working to help with the corona situation. Look, folks, I know financial times are hard. If you can't afford to donate, there is no shame in not being able to afford it. At no point today do I want you to feel like I'm trying to shame you into donating. But if one of the few people like myself who's blessed to work, or you're blessed to have a little extra money laying around, I would seriously consider donating to Save the Children or another worthwhile charity. They deserve the money and support. There are a lot of people in the world right now that are really hurting. So do what you can. And if you can't, that's okay. There are a lot of people, like I said, there are a lot of people in this world who are hurting right now. I understand that. I've had my own issues right now with everything being shut down and people being out of work. Grace of God, though, I am working. I don't know what I'd be doing if I wasn't. So I have that understanding. The other thing I want to talk to you on a less solemn note is it turned out I made a slight mistake when I scheduled this that has worked out wonderfully. See, originally when I chose to schedule Wrath of Khan, it was my intention to try to pick a weekend that there wasn't another event going on during. I didn't want to step on anybody else's toes. We're a brand new convention. I wanted to show respect to other conventions in the area. It turns out I was wrong. There is, in fact, a virtual convention going on this weekend called COGS Steampunk Event. I've been in touch with the organizers. They're a very nice bunch of people. They're running over on Twitch. They are actually, I believe, running later at night than we are tonight and start earlier tomorrow. There's a link to their webpage in the description. Here's the other beautiful thing. I'll be running all day. I have guests all day. They're running and they have guests all day. If you see something, you can always switch back and forth between the two as you see guests that you like. The other advantage that you have is this. When this is over, all the videos are going to be left up on YouTube. You're going to be able to watch them. You can watch them again. If you have to go out to get something to eat or something else goes on and you can't make everything. And believe me, I understand. We're talking about 8 or more hours worth of content. That's a lot to sit through. I'm going to sit through the whole thing because I'm the one organizing everything and keeping everything running hopefully smoothly. So I completely understand it's going to be hard to sit through the whole thing. But you can come back. You'll be able to come back to this channel and watch the videos individually. I'm going to stop the stream and start it again between each presenter. That way you've got separate videos and you can go, oh, okay, now I want to watch Staker. I want to watch John. I want to watch Alex. And watch them in the order that you want. I also mentioned this because good news, COGS is also going to, they're not doing it right now because they're doing it on Twitch instead of YouTube like we are. But when it's over, their videos will also be up on YouTube. So this is a very unusual situation for convention goers where you can attend 2 conventions simultaneously and just hop back and forth between the 2 as you like. But once you're finished, if you only stick with one convention, and there's a great advantage to sticking with us live because we are going to be live. We're going to have the chat running live during the show, during all the interviews and the guest performances, so you guys can ask questions. It's one of the reasons I'm going to be sitting here all day is to keep an eye on the chat, so that I can relay questions to our presenters. But you'll be able to go back later and watch them. You can go back. You can watch. Stay live with us all day, the 2 days, and then when they post it on YouTube, go watch all of COGS, and get to enjoy both conventions free of charge in the comfort of your own home at your own pace. It's a really cool way of doing a convention. I think I've done a lot of conventions over the years, and I'm loving this virtual format and the advantages that it gives us. There are disadvantages to it too. So, okay, now we've got all the technical nitty-gritty stuff out of the way. Let me get into a little bit more of a presentation. I want to talk about why we're doing Wrath of Khan, where the idea came from, and then I'll talk a little bit about myself for those of you who aren't regulars to my channel who don't know who I am. So, Wrath of Khan is an idea that actually, if you want to be honest, I first had the idea of doing my own convention in around 2000. I was a young guy at the time. I had just come back from a ghost convention, and I thought it was a pretty good ghost convention, but it wasn't how I would have done a ghost convention. And I at the same time, I did some gaming conventions, and they were really good gaming conventions. But I could see ways that I would do it differently. I'd do it better, but differently. And I had this idea: what if I just did my own convention? And that just kind of percolated in my head. At the time, I was still doing the nationally syndicated radio show, Lou Tilly Show. Lou and I talked about it from time to time. It was never really an idea that germinated. And then 2 years ago, I made the move to back to internet radio, and went on. Why am I free? I'm blanking on the name of the station. But Hamilton Radio, that's the one. And that went very well, and I had a very good relationship with them. It didn't work. I mean, I'm not on there anymore for financial reasons. I may go back someday. But no shame or shade to be shed on Hamilton. They were a great bunch of people. I'm still friends with them. I have nothing but nice things to say for them. But one of the ideas that came up, particularly once I had assembled the crew I have of Baron Voltage and Brian McKinley, my fiance Misha, and our producer Beth, who deserves all the props in the world for helping get this convention off the ground. Believe me, I had the easy part of this job. The website that we had, the really nice website we had, was the work of Beth Goodman, our producer. The image, the asteroid streaking out of the heavens, is something Amisha put together from a Creative Commons, free license artwork she found online. All I had to do was organize, get a hold of the guests and organize it. And the guests have been so wonderful and so welcoming. And so, okay, yep, I'll do this. Just tell me when. But we started this idea of, hey, why don't we do a convention on our own? And the question became, well, okay, how do we do that? None of us had ever run a convention before. We didn't have the slightest idea. So we started talking, we were trying to talk to hotels about running space, and all the hotels went to us, it's like, well, okay, how many people? It was kind of a catch-22 of, we needed an idea of how many people we're looking at to get the numbers. We needed the numbers to set ticket prices to try to get an idea how many people we're looking at. And then a month ago, the quarantine happens. Early in the quarantine, I attended a virtual convention like this one, done by a group called Vanishing Magic Inc., and it was a convention specifically for magicians. Also free, also on YouTube. And I watched this and I went, this is a really good idea. I can use this. And I decided, I reached out, I started reaching out. I reached out to the folks from the radio show to see what they thought. They thought it was a good idea. Went, okay, let's see, how many people can I get? And I started reaching out to performers I knew and writers I knew and other people like that. And I had a lot of people say yes. I had more people say yes than I've been able to schedule, unfortunately. Some very good folks, like, for example, a good friend of mine, Lupus Creepus, who has a really good YouTube channel. If you don't know it, I suggest checking it out. Would have loved to join us. Unfortunately, his work doesn't. He's too busy with his own work, and he just isn't going to be free. My friend Lisa for Truth has a really good YouTube channel. Tried to get her on. Just time crunches and the nature of the beast, things haven't worked out, which is unfortunate. I regret it, but that's okay, because this, again, the goal is for this to be the first Wrath of Khan. Hence, this is Wrath of Khan 1, the Corona Apocalypse. Wrath of Khan 2, Revenge of the Khan or something, will be hopefully next year. And ideally, I want to try and actually do next year's in person, so you guys can actually come and meet me and meet the other guests. A lot of the guests that we're having on have already expressed interest in this idea, so it's definitely a possibility. So, okay, one moment, I need to get a drink with my throat. So, okay, for those of you who don't know me, who am I? What do I do? Why should you care? Why should you go to my other channel? My name is Kevin Mears. I am a demonologist, paranormal investigator, magician, um, extreme nerd. If you can't quite see it, but my shirt says "With DM smiles, it's already too late," with a D20 in the center. I'm 43. I've been a demonologist for more than 20 years now. I started pretty much when I was 18, in fact, to give you an idea. So about 25 years. Um, I have been involved in radio. I was a co-host of the nationally syndicated radio show, The Lou Gentili Show, which ran from the late 90s to the mid 2000s before Lou unfortunately passed away from cancer. I have been the host of the Paranormal Encyclopedia Show here on YouTube for more than going on 6 years now, believe it or not. I and when I say these things, this is a common question I get. Yes, I have actually directly experienced the paranormal. I have seen demons. I have seen people possessed. I've seen ghosts, elementals, fairies, angels, and all sorts of other bizarre and strange things. I am not just somebody who sits behind a camera or behind a microphone and tells you what I think of these things. I do have direct experience. Granted, don't have direct experience with all of the weird things out there because one thing I've learned in my 43 years is the world is infinitely more bizarre than anyone, least of all me, can give it credit for. There's more going on out there than people think. Which is kind of why I have my own YouTube channel and why I invite people who I don't always agree with or don't see eye to eye with on to talk about what they do, just because I don't know everything. And I want to expose people to other ideas and other ways of thinking to get people to think. And I think that's a worthwhile goal. So you probably all are wondering how I got how the one of the other common questions I get. So there's a couple of common questions I always get when I talk about being a demonologist. One is, are you serious? Yes, I am. Have you actually seen things? Yes, I have. And yes, I'll tell a couple of stories before we get into our first guest. Um, Another really common one is, how do I do this? How did you get started into this? So when I was a kid, so back when we rode dinosaurs to school, for the younger people in the audience, given I'm 43, and we're talking to you about when I was in elementary school. Like, heck, we're talking about kindergarten, first, second grade here. I was fascinated by monster stories, by mythology. I had two uncles, my father's youngest brother and my mother's only brother. She had sisters. Um, Both heavily encouraged this fascination I had with monsters um, and mythology. And as I got older, I read everything I can get my hands on. Local school libraries, local library, bookstores, and I got interested in ghosts. And this, because it is, I mean, really, I think many of us out there are fascinated by, even if you don't believe in them, a lot of us are fascinated by the idea of ghosts because it is the great fundamental question, isn't it? What happens when you die? What comes next? Can people come back? And people have been trying to answer this for all of human history. Lots of people think they know that, have declared they know the answer. You have atheists that say that nope, when you die, that's it. You rot. Your body rots in the ground, and there is nothing beyond. Nothing for your mind after that. You lose consciousness, and never regain it. There are atheists that don't agree with that. That believe there is some form of afterlife. There is a host of religious positions on the subject. Whether you go to heaven, whether you go to hell, whether you experience reincarnation, whether you go to purgatory, whether you do 1,000 other things. But nobody really knows, without having actually died and come back, it's hard to say for sure. Even me, where I can say that I've spoken with spiritual entities, I've asked them about what it's like where they are. And that's the funny thing. When I've spoken with demons on cases, they never describe hell as fire. They never describe hell as in terms of physical torment. I'm not saying that hell isn't physical torment. The word they always use is dark. Every time. Well, Teresa Gulf City Pagan, you bring up an excellent point. You say you've talked to too many to doubt that ghosts exist. I've talked to my share of ghosts too, but here's the philosophical question to consider. How sure are you that what you talk to is actually a ghost? Certainly, I've talked to things that conform with everything that we see as a ghost. I've experienced what seem to be the souls of people that I know to be deceased. To play devil's advocate, though, we have no objective way of being sure that the information we're being given is true. It's hypothetically possible that, to use the evangelical Christian perspective, that these ghosts are actually demons. I don't believe that's true. Do not think I am saying that ghosts are demons. But if you had these beings that are so perfectly capable of lying, you might not be able to tell. For that matter, to present an alternate perspective on the subject, if they were beings from another universe, the mega worlds hypothesis in physics, they might be people that you think are dead, but they might be someone from another reality or another dimension, or a fairy spirit playing a prank on you, or any one of 1,000 other possibilities. You don't. I mean, I agree. I believe that in ghosts. I can, for the fundamentalist Christians in the world, I can actually show you where the Bible agrees with me that spirits of the dead can come back. But there's still a degree of the unknown there. I don't doubt. I'm with you. I don't doubt that ghosts exist. But there's certainly a question of what you're really dealing with. You could hypothetically, and people have, created a system where there are beings that act and correspond with all the things that we assume are ghosts that are something else. Time travelers, space aliens, any sufficiently, Clarke's third law, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. So, and that also raises the question of near-death experiences, because there are people that claim to have visited heaven, and for that matter, there are people who claim to have visited hell and nirvana and Valhalla and many other afterlives, which is one of the fascinating things. And it's not a big problem for polytheists who believe in multiple, because if you believe in multiple gods, it's not a big stretch to believe in multiple afterlives. But it is an interesting question for monotheists of how do non-Christians have an experience of their afterlife, not hell, for the hard evangelicals who think if you don't believe in their God the right way, you're going to go to hell. But there are Hindus that have an experience of nirvana. There are Buddhists that feel like they meet the Buddha. There are pagans who meet their deities. And then there's it's a large problem if you're a strict monotheist who believes that if you don't believe what I do, you're going downstairs. Oh, wow. So Teresa shares a very good story. Some I can't say for certain. The Civil War soldier was so emotional, comforting the poor boy. This was touring a local tavern that served as a hospital. Wow, that sounds like an interesting story. And yeah, again, I'm not passing judgment. I'm giving people. My goal is to give people food for thought. And also to reinforce the idea that I by no means have all the answers. Because this is another common question that I get, and I have what I consider a pragmatic answer to it. And the question that I get is, how do you know that the thing that you cast? Because I consider myself a demonologist. I cast. My job is to do the investigation, get a priest involved, and cast a malevolent spirit out of the house. The question I get asked, and it's a fair question, is How do I know that when I'm having kicked out of the house, demon, not a pissed off human spirit, not an unseelie fairy? Because despite the cutesy image that people have of fairies, fairies can be quite terrifying. Or yokai, a Japanese demon, or an oni, or any one of 100 other names, or jinn, which is the demons of Islam, or Shi'ism and Dibbooks of Judaism. I could go on all night about all the different concepts and names that humans have given the demonic throughout the centuries, and all the different types of spiritual entity we've believed existed out there in the dark. And how do I know which one am I dealing with? My answer is, it doesn't really matter. I don't. Let's be clear. I don't discount that there are more things than humans, ghosts, angels, and demons in the world. The universe is vastly more complicated than that, for goodness sakes. But again, I tend to see things in a very pragmatic way. So the question I ask when I'm going into a house, there's a couple of questions I ask. One, is there actually a spiritual entity in the house? Because the reality is, there are a lot of people in this world, and I can tell you this from personal experience, who think they have spirits in their house that don't. Some of them are mentally ill. A lot of them aren't particularly mentally ill. They have overactive imaginations, and they watched a horror movie one time too many, and now they think Satan's at their front door. Some people have something bizarre but very natural happen that they can't explain. And especially if they're a fan of horror movies, they tend to think of spirits. Dogs have been a reason why people thought their houses were haunted. Toxic mold has been a reason people thought their house was haunted. Raccoons, in one particularly memorable instance, was why people thought their house was haunted. And hundreds of other things that are very natural. But let me give you a perfect example of what I'm talking about. And fans of my show will have heard this story more than once. So for those of you who have, bear with me. Those of you who are new, have a listen, because it illustrates the point well. I had a friend of mine who was a fellow investigator working in Texas, who was asked to go into a house across the street from where she lived. This house had been the site of a murder. After this murder took place, the owners haven't been able to rent the house. People move in, night or two passes, they're gone. They will not go back into the house. They're freaked out. They're getting desperate. They need to rent it. They can't afford not to. They ask her to see what she can do. Now, this is San Antonio, Texas, which is not necessarily the safest city in the world. And it's not the best part of San Antonio either. And it's at night. And she's a woman. For lots of reasons that have nothing to do with the ghosts, it's not a good idea. Doing this alone would not have been a good idea. But she has this friend. This friend is a retired Navy SEAL, search and rescue, pretty tough guy. Wants to investigate ghosts with her. It's like, okay, you're on. The two of them go into the house. They hear noises. She decides, okay, that's strange. Let's find out what's going on. He runs out the door screaming. Runs all the way home. She finds out the house isn't haunted. Family of raccoons have set up shop underneath the house. People move into the house. Because of disclosure laws, they have to be told that a murder took place there. It is a common law throughout the United States that if a house has been the site of a murder, in some states, even if the house is thought to be haunted, you're required to disclose that information to anyone you're renting or selling to. The reason for it is actually pretty simple and legal, not spiritual. Those stories can lower the property value. And it is a standard law that you have to inform people of anything that will diminish the value of their property. So she goes back to inform the owners to call animal control instead of an exorcist. A little while later, she sees the red and blue flashing lights of a cop on the street. He went home and called. I'm not going to tell the rest of the story. It's moot point to what the point I'm making. But basically, he went home, called the cops, told the cops that the house had eaten her, and they got the cops to show up. Needless to say, it was more than a little embarrassing for him when the truth was revealed. Now, the reason I tell this story is to illustrate a point. The former Navy SEAL was not crazy. The people who lived in the house who fled were not crazy. What they had was a mind primed by years of ghost stories and horror movies, most likely, like the rest of us. The fact that they knew that somebody had been murdered in that house, which, how many horror movies and ghost TV shows can you think of that start with the house, someone was murdered in the house and now the house is haunted? They move in. Now they hear this scratching noise. They hear these eerie screams. Because let's face it, raccoons make some really creepy noises. That seem to come from the walls. They seem to come from the floor. And they can't find a source. Is it that strange that they freaked out? It's very easy to sit and think, oh, I would remain calm in that situation. It's not so easy to remain calm when it's happening to you. There's this thing that psychologically they've discovered in a number of studies that when something happens that shakes your worldview, that shakes your certainty of how things operate, that's incredibly upsetting and disturbing, and it screws, unsurprisingly, people react badly to it. So yeah, a lot of people that I talk to need reassurance. I had somebody reach out to me a month or so ago who would wake up in the middle of the night. They'd be unable to move. They would see dark and disturbing figures moving around them and feel great fear. This is a terrifying experience. It's a very common experience. It's what's called sleep paralysis. And the big indicator, because there are legitimate spiritual phenomena that act a lot like that. I don't believe this was an example of that, and I'll tell you why. Nobody else, I asked him. Nothing happened when he was normally fully awake. Nobody else had these experiences. Sleep paralysis is a weird thing. Basically, there's a mechanism in your brain that kind of switches your body off when you're sleeping. Basically, this is why most of us don't, get up and make coffee if we're dreaming about getting up and making coffee. Sometimes that malfunctions. Sometimes you'll wake up and it still doesn't switch off, so it can't move. Sometimes it switches off, it does switch off when it shouldn't, and you wake up thrashing around your bed from your dream of falling. I've had that one happen. It's actually pretty common. About 30% of the population experiences this. Oh, and there's a number of sleep disorders, particularly narcolepsy, where this is a common symptom of it. So none of this is a particularly bizarre thing to have happen to you, but people aren't well informed about it, so they tend to understandably freak out. And there's folklore from all over the world describing this phenomenon. They call it succubi, they call it hag, old hag, night hag, Lilith. And again, I'm not discounting all of that as natural. There are times that can't be so easily explained. I'll tell you a real good example of that in a second. but it is this experience outside of our norm. And what makes it even more terrifying is because it happens in that state between falling asleep and waking up, that drowsy state where your brain is starting to turn on. There's something else that's very common there, which is what's called the hypnagogic, or which is what you call it when it happens just before you fall asleep, or hypnopopic, which is when you're just as you're waking up, hallucination. Um, what that is a very fancy name for is your mind, your body is awake, but you're dreaming. So you're gonna have these horrible, disturbing images. I've heard secondhand accounts and even firsthand accounts of people with narcolepsy who have had experiences of seeing people break through the front door of their house in masks, come up to them and shoot them and things like that, only to have it turn out to be a dream. But they were awake for it and unable to move. So it can be absolutely horrifying. But it has a natural explanation. And if you have this happen to you regularly, it may be a spiritual thing. And especially if other people are experiencing it, you may want to talk to someone like me. But if you're the only one having this experience, you definitely should consider actually, even other people having experience, I would always recommend talking to your doctor. Because it's always possible you're having some sort of sleep thing. I am not a doctor. I am not a psychiatrist. I am not a neurologist. I'm not qualified to comment on all of that. So I would always suggest seeking competent medical help for what may be a very real medical condition that can be treated. So let me get into so I've gotten into the rational. Let's get into where the rational starts to break down. I'll talk about some of my experiences, and I'm going to talk about a time that sleep paralysis is a little more disturbing than you might think. So first, we're going to talk about the scary side of sleep paralysis, which is the DAB-SOG. DAB space TSONG. DAB-SOG is a phenomenon that is almost completely unique to males in their early 20s from Southeast Asia, particularly people of a tribal group known as the Hmong. DAB-SOG, or it's also sometimes called sudden unexplained death syndrome. Or medically, it's known as sudden unexplained death syndrome, I should say. Colloquially, it's known as a DAB-SOG. Is young men who die in their sleep. It's very similar to SIDS, the infant death syndromes. It's an infant death syndrome, in that there's no medical explanation for what happened. With SUDS, or the DAB-SOG, there's one additional detail. They usually have a look of terror on their face. But again, even to this day, while it's become less common, there is no medical explanation for why these men die. They are otherwise completely healthy. They didn't have medical problems before it happened. But they die in the night. Always in the night. Always medically unexplained. Always in their sleep, and with this look of terror upon their face. There is an explanation for it. Not in science and medicine. In the folklore of the Hmong people. The Hmong people are displaced people. They are originally from Vietnam. Unfortunately, during the Vietnam War, there was a war, folks. And for their protection, the United States government displaced a bunch of them to the U.S. Not as I understand it, I'm not an expert on the history of this. It wasn't a bad thing. It was us trying to protect them. There's a problem. In Hmong culture, there is a type of demonic spirit known as the DAB-SOG. The DAB-SOG lives underneath the ground. To keep it underneath the ground, specific shamanistic rituals have to be performed at specific holy sites by shaman. We bring them to the United States. They can no longer access the holy sites, which are all over in Vietnam. People are split up because of the realities of the situation. There are other issues, so the shaman can't necessarily perform the rituals that they're supposed to perform. Now, what is a dab song like for the person experiencing it? Well, according to the folklore, it was sit on your chest and paralyze you, making you incapable of moving, and choke the life out of you, which is virtually identical to the phenomenon known as a hag attack, and particularly that name's common in Canada, or a succubus attack. There's legends that go back thousands of years in Europe and the Middle East, or Lilith and Liltu. For those of you who think the stories of the Davsok sounds familiar, yes, this is actually one of the things that inspired Wes Craven to make Nightmare on Elm Street. And don't take my word for that. Go ahead and look it up on YouTube. You can look it up. You'll find information about this phenomenon. And the last time I looked it up, which was years ago, they still don't know why it happens. On another nice and pleasant and cheerful note, when it comes to the other version of this that isn't so picky, except that it affects children instead of men from only one part of the world. If you go back to the legends of Lilith, lots of people today, when you say Lilith, they think of, oh, she's the first wife of Adam. She's the original feminist because she wouldn't lay underneath Adam during sex. Go back. That idea comes from the idea that she was the first wife of Adam. This first appears in books of Jewish Kabbalah in the around the 17th century, 16th, 17th century. She's much older than that. She's mentioned in the book of Isaiah, for example. It's common her name appears, Lilith, in the Hebrew. It's commonly translated in English as a screech owl, or the terror that flieth by night. But it's originally Hebrew. In the Hebrew, Lilith, in Jewish folklore, Lilith was a demon that particularly liked to attack children and murder children. Even when she got her human upgrade, as it were, into the first wife of Adam, one of the things about her is she liked to murder children in their sleep. Cheerful thought, isn't it, folks? And we're coming up on the end of our first hour, and it's almost time for me to be joined by the extremely talented Virgo Triad. So let me tell one more story, I think, and then we're going to close up briefly so I can end the stream, start a new stream, specifically so that I can have the videos separated for everybody. Hopefully that will work. But I'm going to tell you a personal experience of mine. This happened in the late 90s. It is by far the most disturbing case of demonic activity I ever investigated. Started out pretty simple. I was working for a grocery store at the time. I was in my early 20s, so a young guy. And I get a phone call. Early in the day, I'm supposed to go to work later that night. I get a call from my mentor, the late Lou Gentili. I got a case. Can you come with me? Like, what? Because he woke me up. I'm like, where am I? What? So he had a case in western Pennsylvania, near but not in Pittsburgh. 2, in fact. The one guy we never got a hold of, so that case was kind of a bust. I'm like, okay, let me see what I can do. I'll try and call out of work. I invented an excuse, called out of work. Drove to Philadelphia to meet up with Lou so that we could make the drive out. It's a long, bloody drive. Philadelphia and the Pittsburgh area is 3.5, 4 hours, give or take, depending on how fast you drive. He was driving a work truck, so we couldn't go super fast. We get up there in the afternoon, starting into the evening. We sit down with this guy, and he tells us about his experiences. He'll wake up in the night, usually around 3 in the morning, and it feels like there's multiple somethings, in fact, on the bed with him that are walking around him, that are poking him, that are prodding him, that are pulling his hair. He feels like a finger is being pushed into his ear and it's pushing down inside of his body, like a hand is rubbing his thigh, but not the skin of his thigh, but the underneath the thigh. And he'll feel this huge weight settle on him in the night. We set up an infrared video camera in his bedroom. Ran a cable from the camera to a TV monitor in the next room. And before people ask, this unfortunately was 98 or so. You're talking about 20 years. The video's gone, long gone. He tells us, we hear him on the video saying it's starting. And I watch something small, maybe about the weight of a house cat, walk across the bed, starting at the foot, walking up towards his legs. 2 problems. First, whatever it is invisible. All we see is the depressions on the bed of whatever's walking across it. Second, cats are 4-legged. Whatever this was only had 2 feet. We went into the room later. We saw black shadow figures. I saw the image, almost like an after image when the lights are on and you get those purple images in the dark of something sitting on the bed. It was tall with long spindly arms and legs, kind of like a monkey's, bat-like wings, and horns. I mean, it looked exactly like what I would imagine what it actually was to look like. As demons go, there's an order to them. Just like there's a hierarchy to angels, there's what you might call a lowerarchy to demons. The weakest type of demon, the ones that people most often encounter, are what's called imps. They tend to appear as animals or other non-human forms, and they're always very small, no more than 3 feet in height. The problem is imps are a little like piranha. If you don't know, piranha are harmless when you only have one of them. When they're dangerous at all, and the reality with piranha, unlike with imps, is that they're actually not all that dangerous. But when you have if you're going to have a problem at all with a piranha, when you really need to worry about imps, is that they travel in packs. And this guy had a pack of them living in his house. It was something bigger, probably a succubi, watching over them and giving orders. Now, that's pretty freaky. I think most of you would agree if you believe the story. But that's not why I find the story so unsettling. See, there's a part of his story that he didn't tell us at first, and I also left out. It didn't start with him having these experiences. it's him. It was his wife that first had the experiences. Everything I described happened to her. And I'll come back to your point in a moment, Teresa. It's an excellent point. He didn't believe her because it wasn't happening to him yet. She went to the priest to try to get the house exorcised. He didn't believe her either. He took her to a psychiatrist. The psychiatrist thought she was crazy. Put her on drugs. I am extremely sorry to say that while she was desperately trying to find someone to help her, one night she went to the cabinet they kept in the living room, unlocked it, took something out, got in her car, drove to the grocery store where she worked, sat in the parking lot, put the gun in her mouth, and pulled the trigger. Cops were at his house the next day to inform him his wife had committed suicide. And that night, everything she had ever described to him he started to experience. That's when he reached out. Teresa Holgo, Sidney Pagan, made an excellent point. What I just described is very similar to a very common phenomenon that people talk about in debate, which is called shadow people. Shadow people is when you see pitch black figures. And a lot of people, I've seen them myself, but a lot of other people have seen them, and this includes me, being blacker than black. Light falls into them. Almost, not quite a black hole, but almost, because it's not sucking everything else in, just light, but kind of that black hole effect. They're so dark they stand out against normal darkness. There's a lot of speculation about these shadow people. People have claimed that they are just shy. They don't want people to see what they look like. I have never personally encountered a shadow person in anything other than a demonic capacity. In the vast majority of cases I've read of people who encountered shadow people are encountering shadow people is a fancy word for demon or evil spirit. If you don't like the word demon, because some people don't, because religious connotations, call it a malevolent spirit, call it a wicked spirit, whatever it is, it's something that means people harm. But that about wraps up our first segment. Keep in mind, this is just the first segment. This is not the end of the whole thing. We're going to be joined momentarily by Virgo Triad, our very first guest. Virgo, if you're listening, I'm going to end the stream now and set it up for yours. So, folks, like I said, just sit tight. Keep an eye on the channel. The next video will be starting momentarily. I want to do it this way because it's going to be easier for us than separating out each and every video one at a time and all that stuff. So, yeah, like I said, it is now just about 2 o'clock. I am ending the first stream, setting up the second. We should be back within the next 5 to 10 minutes, maybe 15 at the most. I just want to make sure everything's up and running. So I want to separate the videos out. I want to make sure everything's up and running with Virgo. And then we'll be live again for our very first guest, the one and only Virgo Triad, plus the Virgo Triad channel. I will be putting a link to her YouTube channel in the description of the next stream, so you can all go check that out. She's a wonderful lady. If you guys, those of you who don't know her, I highly recommend sticking around and hearing what she has to say. But tune in. Remember, this is Wrath of Khan, the Corona Apocalypse, going on all day long today and tomorrow as well. This is your host and master of ceremonies, because it's much funnier than saying ceremonies, Kevin Mears, saying I'll see you in a minute.